Well, of course they did. Of course, the Kansas City Star decides we are going to carry City Council's water because we want them to do anything that they can possibly do and get away with and pull off when it comes to guns. That's what they're looking at. That's what they're thinking. And, it was very predictable. Very, very predictable. Good morning. Happy Thursday. It is great to be here on KCMO. So, yesterday, the mayor, well, this was actually 2 days ago now. It was on Tuesday that the mayor announced two proposed firearm restrictions that he hopes are going to reduce killings in this town. One would prohibit minors from buying ammunition without parental consent, and the other would ban so-called switches, devices that turn handguns into automatic weapons. Now, if you're sitting there like I was when we talked about this yesterday and wondering to yourself, geez, I didn't know that minors could buy ammunition. They can't. They're not allowed to. They would be breaking federal law. A 16-year-old buying ammunition is already illegal. It is already illegal to turn your handgun into an automatic weapon via a switch. That's already illegal. But hey, it's the old adage of, do something. That's the old adage. And that's what the city council, led by the mayor's office, is doing here. And by the way, the mayor will be here at 7:30 this morning, so we will certainly be asking him about this and much more. So the Kansas City Star does its bidding yesterday for city council with the headline, Mayor Lucas's gun control proposals may not survive courts, but he's right to try. They write here, at his second inaugural on Tuesday, Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas announced that the first thing he's going to do this term is introduce two proposals for local firearms restrictions. Even though our mayor, the law professor, says the proposals were written in a way that gets around the maddening Missouri law that bars local governments from saving lives through gun control measures. Yep, that's the line from the Kansas City Star. Proposals written in a way that gets around the maddening Missouri law that bars local governments from saving lives through local gun control measures. The audacity of the Kansas City Star to write that sentence as if there's overwhelming evidence, which there isn't, that the stricter your gun laws are, the safer you are, the less homicide there's going to be in your city. The fact that they write that sentence with a straight face and expect you to believe it is absolutely stunning. But I wouldn't put, and I never have put anything past them. But they act like 16-year-olds are out there buying ammunition around Kansas City. And I'm going to ask the mayor this because I'm just curious. I mean, how many cases, how many homicide or murder suspects, how many murder suspects in this town allegedly bought their ammunition underage? I would be curious to know. And I'd be curious to know how many lives we think could be saved by an ordinance like that. And also, how many homicides were committed with these so-called switches. Once again, I would just be curious to know. I know both these things are already illegal by federal law, but if we're going to have these ordinances and if they are going to do everything possible to save lives through local gun control measures, I just would be curious to see some data to back it up. Like, I agree, 16-year-olds should not be buying ammunition. I agree with the mayor on that. I agree that you should not be switching your Glocks to switches. I completely agree with him there. But there's already laws against them. So the Kansas City Star goes on to write here, the legality of this move might turn out to be as solid as that time Donald Trump announced that he could declassify documents just by thinking about it. So they got their Trump reference in there as well. Very nice of them.
Such a nice man.
The Star goes on the right. So is this a waste of time then? No, because with a sickening 100 homicides in the first half of the hottest year in human history, Ding, ding, ding. We got on the climate change angle in here as well, so they've checked off a lot of boxes. This is a kitchen sink moment for fighting gun violence in Kansas City, even as Republicans in Jefferson City do their utmost to make the problem worse. One of the proposals that Lucas announced would keep minors from buying ammunition without parental consent, and the other would ban switches, the devices that turn handguns into automatic weapons. Star goes on the right. If courts ultimately block the mayor's ideas for local gun laws from being implemented, it would only underline how desperately we need to be able to pass our own gun restrictions, perhaps by amending the state constitution through the ballot initiative that organizers for an effort called Sensible Missouri hope to get in front of voters next November. The Star writes, by then, though, how many more victims of gun violence will we have buried? Too many, which is why we share the mayor's impatience. The Star is doing its best to obviously do the bidding of the mayor. But I was thinking about this based on how the conversations go in other parts of the country. You look at a place like Chicago, right? Homicides are crazy high. Gun violence is out of control. And what is the excuse always, considering Illinois has very strict gun laws? The excuse is always, well, you know, the guns come from Indiana, and they've got loose gun laws because they're a red state, and there's nothing that we can do here in Chicago and Illinois. They're all coming from Indiana. So essentially saying state lines are meaningless, and the guns come from there. So that's always an excuse up in Chicago. But here in Kansas City, somehow, if you pass these city ordinances, which are already federal laws on the books, you are going to create this utopia in the 320 square miles of Kansas City by having these two ordinances in place, despite the fact that the rest of Missouri would not have these ordinances that are already violations of federal law. You following, John?
I am. I've noted several 30, 40-year-old OG gangsters getting teens to go in and buy the ammo for them.
Yes.
You know, I'm just like, you know, what, that one doesn't really factor much into the homicides as I read the stories year after year here at this station. So, you know, when they identify people, you know, occasionally we know when it's a teenager that makes the news. You know?
Yes. That's notable news.
It's a small percentage.
It's a very small percentage. In fact, I've got the percentages
Do tell.
Right here. This is the latest daily homicide analysis from the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. The suspects, so they've got 128 suspects right now listed here in 117 murders, because obviously you could have multiple people who are suspects. Of the 128 suspects, 3 are under the age of 18. That's 2%. 98% of the suspects are over the age of 18. 3 of the suspects are under the age of 18. And the city believes if it passes an ordinance that's already a federal law, somehow that's going to drive things in the right direction on the homicide front. And notice, like, I've given you a handful of stats here in the last 9 minutes or so. Kansas City Star didn't give you one. Outside of, we must do something! Do something! Gun restrictions are the only way, despite the fact that these are already federal laws. 913-408-7710. The mayor will be on this show at 7:30 this morning. We will ask about this and much more. So it's going to be a very interesting conversation here on KCMO.
Well, yeah, see, you can't put numbers in an article like that because you'd have to go down and change the typesetters, like on your phone when you're texting, you know. So they send these things off. Letters only, please.
Yeah, they're not big on numbers and facts
Just
and things
text,
like that.
please.
Yes, exactly right. So, you know, as we get set to talk to the mayor, I want to hear from you as well. But I will give the mayor this. There was something he said yesterday that he was spot on about on a different issue. We'll tell you what that is coming up. Pete Mundo on KCMO. Grasping at straws, man. I don't know how else to put it. City Council, this new Kansas City, Missouri City Council that's set to begin this week, suddenly believes and magically thinks that the reason we have record homicides and a way to alleviate the problem is by having ordinances that already, by the way, are violations of federal law, like when it comes to minors and ammunition, prohibiting them from buying it without parental consent. And the other would ban so-called switches, devices that turn handguns into automatic weapons. The mayor will be on this morning to talk about this at 7:30, so we're looking forward to that conversation. We also want to hear from you at 913-408-7710 on what this will realistically do. I don't see how it does anything because the stuff we're talking about is already illegal. It is already illegal for a 16-year-old to buy ammunition. It's already illegal to have the switch on the gun. That is all already federal law. So what's a city ordinance possibly going to accomplish? Let's start with Carl. He is in Independence. What's up, Carl? Good morning.
Hi, Pete. Well, 4 years late, the mayor has gotten started a program that will unify the community, the city, and the police department to find these young men primarily and intercede in their life and help them find a better path. They're doing a program that they worked in Omaha, Nebraska, and it's one I've been yelling for 4 years. They finally started doing it. As for these gun control things, they're stupid. They're either already illegal, they absolutely have proven not to work, and the city council and the Kansas City Star are woefully behind the times. If they would get behind this program that's already been started, it would make a vast difference in our crime rate.
I mean, I've heard about the program. I don't know the name of it. I don't know if you do off the top of your head, but I've heard of this.
I was at a meeting with three representatives of this program, one from the police, a minister, and a young lady, nice lady from the city, and who are actually putting this thing together and making it work. And I don't know the name of it either. But
what are the details? What are the details of it? What makes you think it's going to work?
Because it actually deals with the problem, which is the moral values of the young people, primarily young men. Mm-hmm. They have data that says it works in Omaha. This is based on the book Bleeding Out by Dr. Thomas Abt, ABT. Mm-hmm. I handed you that book a while back. So
yes, and the Politics in the Pint. Yes.
Yes, sir. That's the program.
Okay.
So it's deal with the moral values of the person who will pick the gun up and kill with it is the only thing that will work. Mm-hmm. The gun is an inanimate object.
It is. Thank you, Carl.
Deal with the people.
You're right. You got to deal with the people. I agree with you there. There's no doubt about it. And if they are implementing a program, see, if I was the mayor, I'd be bragging about this program, this crime-fighting program that they're trying to implement out of Omaha. And, he's going to be on this morning at 7:30, so I'm happy to ask him about that if they are implementing that, which Carl says they are based on some meetings that he's been to. I'd be bragging about that. That's what I'd be doing. But if your fetish is just, gun control stuff and you get off on passing potentially city ordinances that already are violations of federal law, then I don't know what you're accomplishing there. Brian is on KCMO out of Olathe. Hey, Brian, good morning.
Good morning, Pete. How are you?
I'm well, Brian. What's happening?
First time, long time on my case, but this one got my attention quickly.
Right. Well, don't let us down, Brian. Don't let us down.
Well, one thing I just want to clarify with regards to the language of the ordinance that you're describing. I haven't read it personally, but you mentioned specifically handguns, which there's very few handguns that have a selector switch, and the only one that I read is 18, and that's illegal unless you buy it, and it has to be a pre-1986 version, and you have to go through a lengthy process with a Form 4, NFA, and ATF approvals that can take up to a year just to be qualified, background checks and everything like that to be able to own it. So my question is, does it say specifically handguns, or does it say any gun, or does that include what I would consider to be, or people with a pistol brace, AR-15 and a shorter barrel? That's considered a handgun, pistol, whatever you want to call it. But every single AR platform in the market has a selector switch. Now, legally, a civilian like me is only allowed to own that gun with the selector switch that's mechanically capable just to go from safe to fire, which is a semi-automatic weapon. But I guess it's possible if somebody is a gunsmith and knows what they're doing, and I don't personally, but I'm sure there are people that would be capable to be able to modify that gun to turn it into, illegally of course, turn it into a full automatic rifle.
Well,
so my question is it just the switches that are illegal? If so, if it's a switch, then that means every single AR platform in Kansas City will be illegal.
Brian, you're getting into some, those are very good questions. You know, I have not seen the actual verbiage of the ordinance. I have not seen that. But these are good questions to bring up, and we'll try to get some clarity from the mayor this morning on this.
Let's be honest. Any person that's anti-gun, and I'm a very pro-2A person, they're going to attack the AR platform, assault rifle, quote unquote, which it's really not, any which way they can.
Yeah.
So this could be one of those end arounds that could, just by the fact that it has
I see what you're saying there, Brian. Hey, thanks, man. Good first time. Well done.
Yeah, you bet. All right,
that's okay. Got a minute for you, John in KC North. What's up, my man?
Hey, I was just saying how it just shows the stupidity of the council and the mayor, because all the rights and the ability for these vendors to sell ammunition and weapons, that's all issued from the federal government and the state. You have to get their approval and permission. That's where all your forms that you fill out and everything, they all go to there. They don't go to the city. The city has zero power to do anything to these people. It's the federal, and everybody's more worried about the federal government coming after you than a city who has a $500 fine and 6 months in jail, or they're going to put you in federal prison for years. And multiple $1,000 fines for this kind of stuff.
John, that's so right. Thank you for pointing that out as well. Great points to start the morning. And does anyone think that the feckless Jackson County Prosecutor's Office, who no criminal in this town fears, is now going to be shaking in its boots over a $500 fine potentially on a couple of ordinances that they're proposing? Please. It's a joke. 913-408-7710. The mayor will be here at 7:30 this morning. Meantime, Tucker Carlson got a big interview. We'll tell you who that is next. I know that now Trump's been indicted for like a third time. We're supposed to forget about the fact that Hunter Biden allegedly had pops on the phone 20 times with his business partners during his time as VP and thereafter. I know we're supposed to forget about that story, but to me, I don't know. They're both important. We should cover and talk about both of them. A wild concept.
Talk about a bombshell.
But if you don't want to talk about one, you can only focus on the other. I think it's good to talk about both, since they're both newsworthy subjects. You got one president who continues to find himself in legal trouble and is being targeted by his chief political opponent's Department of Justice, Banana Republic type stuff. And then on top of that, you've got the executive in the White House, the chief executive, finding himself in a precarious situation where he was, at the very least, allegedly on the phone with his son's business partners as his son was dealing with foreign governments while dad was VP. What dad's involvement is at this point, we don't have the full extent of, admittedly. I'm not going to say that Joe's absolutely guilty. We don't know that yet, but it certainly doesn't look good and it doesn't smell good.
Well, I think he's an amateur meteorologist. He was delivering weather reports in these calls.
Hey, man,
right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
The guys in Moscow want to know what it's like in Delaware on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
They're dying to know what the beach is like down there at Rehoboth. It's sunny here. Jeez, unbelievable. So last night, Devin Archer, who is Hunter Biden's former business partner, the guy who testified behind closed doors Tuesday, that would have been. Monday, I guess that would have been. Devon Archer did his first interview since that point with Tucker Carlson. Not on Fox News, with Tucker on Twitter. Of course, the new show that he's doing. Although, can you call it Tucker on Twitter now that Twitter is X? Just thought about that. The show was called Tucker on Twitter, but there is no Twitter technically anymore. It's now called X.
It should be Tucker on X.
Sounds a little bit. Which does sound a little racy. I don't know what you're getting. Tucker on X, jeez. See, that's why I don't want to get too far off the beaten path here, but Elon Musk is a brilliant man, incredible businessman. But I will not understand why you buy a brand like Twitter that already has the built-in cachet that it has, and you change the name to X, of all things. I don't get it. But anyway, Tucker got the interview with Devon Archer, and it was about 12 minutes, and here's the juiciest part of the whole thing. Take a listen to this, a never-before-seen letter that Joe Biden, during his time as vice president, wrote to Devon Archer just as he was starting this business venture with Hunter Biden.
We found this letter kind of amazing. It's from January 20th, 2011, which I think puts you in your late 30s, mid to late 30s. Right. Okay, so you're a younger man. This is from the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, to you personally, and it's personalized here at the bottom. Devon Archer, Rosemont Seneca Partners, that was your partnership with Hunter Biden in Georgetown. Dear Devon, I apologize for not getting a chance to talk to you at the luncheon yesterday. I was having trouble getting away from hosting President Hu Jintao, who was running China at that point. I hope I get a chance to see you again soon with Hunter. I hope you enjoyed lunch. Thanks for coming. Sincerely, Joseph R. Biden Jr. P.S. Handwritten, happy you guys are together. So there are many levels here. But here's the Vice President of the United States saying to you, a man in his mid-30s, who's not a government official, I'm sorry I was occupied with the guy who runs the world's largest country. I would much rather talk to you and thank you. What was he thanking you for?
Well, first of all, it's a lovely letter, and it was...
It's quite enthusiastic. It's a little weird, though, right?
Yeah, well, it was kind of the beginning of our partnership, and he was thanking me and thanking Hunter, I think, at the end of the day, for bringing this idea of this government regulatory strategic advisory business into the private equity world. And I think he was excited about the prospects for Hunter, and, he was just thanking me. I think it was a nice gesture.
It was a nice, for sure.
For sure.
Very polite. It gets a 10 on the etiquette scale, but he's a vice president of the United States,
right,
and he's talking about foreign business deals with you and thanking you for that.
I think, again, it goes back to my earlier point I think I hit the jackpot in finding the regulatory environment or company that can navigate right to the top. But, obviously, as time was told, being a little bit too close to the sun ends up burning you.
For sure. And it did you, and
Absolutely.
you suffered greatly for it. And this is not a criticism of you. I would think as a business guy, you use every advantage. These are not business guys. This is the Vice President of the United States. He's not allowed to be working on businesses with foreign governments while he's Vice President, I don't think.
Not that I know of.
But here he is!
Right.
All right. That was Tucker Carlson with Devon Archer. Now, Devon Archer, the former business partner of Hunter Biden, alleges that Joe was on the phone with Hunter in at least 20 settings with business partners. So a couple of things here I just want to touch on. The letter that Tucker reads to Devon Archer, that Devon Archer received from Joe Biden back in 2011. Says, Dear Devon, I apologize for not getting a chance to talk to you at the luncheon yesterday. I was having trouble getting away from hosting President Hu, the former president of China, HU. I hope I get a chance to see you again soon with Hunter. I hope you enjoyed the lunch. Thanks for coming. Now, Tucker's jumping to a conclusion here that, in all fairness, it's not that I don't think Joe has plenty of corruption in his closet. I do believe that he does, That's my hunch, and I think that there's a lot of arrows that point towards that. But that letter is not as incriminating to me as Tucker's making it out to be. I mean, I just Googled President Who, White House, and there's pictures of him with Obama and with George W. because he was president of China from 2003 to 2013. This is not in any way a defense at all of Joe Biden. I think there's a lot more smoke around this entire thing, but this letter doesn't necessarily do it for me. I mean, how many times are, even if they're bad actors on the world stage at the White House, the president, the VP is meeting with them. Now, Devin Archer, Hunter Biden's business partner, happens to be at that luncheon where the Chinese president is, but what's going on there is not clear to me. How big is the luncheon? Is it 10 people? Is it 100 people? Is it 1,000 people? I don't know. And I know that we all want to jump to a conclusion and find the smoking gun, so to speak, but this letter doesn't do it for me. It's not that I don't think the smoking gun exists. I think there's plenty of them. But I'm not jumping on this letter being one of them in the way that Tucker Carlson is in this conversation. But everyone's so desperate to find one, they just want to grab it wherever they can. But this letter's not it, as far as I can tell. And as much as, I think Devin Archer's certainly got a lot of valuable information. Like, let's not forget that this guy is no saint, right? This guy went into business with the VP's son, who is a drug addict, to try to make an enormous amount of money off his friend's father, who was vice president, and screw the taxpayer. Like, no one's a hero here in this story. Now, if this guy turns out to be a whistleblower, an effective whistleblower, I'll be happy to thank him for his service to the American people. But outside of that, I'm not going to go much further and prop him up and put up a statue of the guy. Jim is out east. What's up, Jim? Good morning.
Well, Pete, this doesn't go with Joe's argument that he knows nothing about Hunter's business dealings.
Very good point. Very, very good point. Yes. And I wish Tucker would have taken that angle instead of saying Joe Biden can't host the president to China, because that happens all the time, right? I mean, We've seen that happen. I wish Tucker would have taken exactly the point that you just said, which continues to point out the fact that he knew at least something about what was going on between Hunter, his business dealings, and this guy, Devin Archer. You nailed it, Jim.
Exactly. All right.
You nailed it. Jim is spot on there. That's very well done. 913-408-7710 as we get it rolling on KCMO Talk Radio. John's in Kansas City. What's up, John?
I think you're right. The letter in and of itself, by itself, is nothing. It's a congratulatory thank you kind of letter. I think what Hunter's trying to say is it's the bigger picture of let me name drop. Let me show you the access level. Joe wrote me a personal note. You see, that's the level of access I have with this guy. So it's a piece of that larger puzzle that Hunter and Archer used to go and say, look, we have access. We're here. That's when people say he stopped by to talk about the weather. You mean you had the vice president of the United States just drop by your office to say hi? Wow, you must be somebody for that to happen.
Yes.
So of course you can say I wasn't in business with them, but it's the same thing saying I'm not in business with the mob.
Yeah. John, you're right. You man, outstanding. You and Jim, back-to-back calls, pointing out what Tucker Carlson should have as well, which is what makes this letter valuable is pointing out the fact that Joe knew who this guy Archer was, knew he was working with Hunter in some capacity. Now, what that leads to is still yet to be determined. But I wish Tucker would have taken the angles that we're talking about here instead of pointing out or saying that Biden can't meet with President Who and that's a conflict of interest, because it's not on its surface. It is if it ties into the rest of this stuff. It absolutely does. 913-408-7710 is the text line and the phone line here on KCMO Talk Radio. Don't forget, we've got your chance at training camp tickets to see the world champs next Tuesday. So do not miss that at 7:10, about 25 minutes away here on KCMO Talk Radio. Coming up, Missouri Democrats are apologizing for a social media post We'll tell you what that was about next. I know it's raining out there this morning, but it's going to peter off here in the next hour or so, and should be a decent afternoon. I'm going to be out at the K today watching the Royals and the Mets, and I'm just going to take Claire out. I'm going to take out the oldest 4-year-old. Chloe would be way too much. You know, Dad dragging them both out, the 4 and the 2-year-old. It would just be like, I'd never see a pitch, John. It would be tough.
Yeah, the 4-year-old's taking some of that in. Like,
yes.
Where are we at? Wow.
Yeah.
This big, all that stuff.
Yes. The
2-year-old's maintenance.
No. It was going to be both of them, and then we said, you know what, I'll just take the oldest. By the way, the game's in the middle of Chloe's nap time, so it would have been a long day. No nap at the ballpark, 90 degrees. Let's pass on that. Plenty of time for baseball games going forward.
They set still through at least the first 7 innings.
Claire's got a chance to get to – if we get to the 4th inning, I'll probably need some Cracker Jacks or something to get her to the 4th inning. But we'll be able to do that.
A weekday afternoon game at the K, you should be able to move freely about the cabin.
Yes.
And keep the 4-year-old entertained, even if it's just up to the top of the section and back down the other side.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
My advice, try to get her to the 3rd, 4th inning, then go out to the park for about an inning and a half in the middle of the game, and then maybe if she'll want to go back to the seats for the last few innings.
All right. That's a great idea there, Mark. Sounds like someone who's done this before with a 4-year-old.
I have a few times.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. We got the tickets. Didn't cost a lot. Good thing about having a bad team, $15 later. Although I'll tell you what, the fees on these StubHubs and SeatGeeks, woo, boy, they know how to hose you. I'll leave it at that. So we'll be out there. Of course, the Royals are now playing their best baseball of the season. They've won 5 in a row. All it takes is the Mets coming to town to make them look good. Goodness gracious. So I will teach my daughter what it's like to be an embarrassed Mets fan when you start the season as a World Series favorite, and now you're on the verge of getting swept by the Royals, the second worst team in baseball. So she will get a full tutorial on that today, John, and we'll be off to the races.
I think the plus side for you is if the team wins, she perhaps will feel that she was the cause of it and insist you go the next time the Mets are in town.
Yes.
Or even just the next game.
Yeah. Well, it was funny. It's so funny to get into the mind of a 4-year-old because when we flew in, and we were out the last, we took some time off here the last couple of weeks and visited family. And they happen to be, my in-laws are right there on Long Island, which is near Queens, where the Mets play their games. And you can see, if you go to LaGuardia, you can see where the Mets play. And I always point out to her, I said, hey, that's where the Mets play. So I told her last night, I said, hey, we're going to go to the Mets game tomorrow. She's like, we got to get in an airplane? I'm like, no, they're here in Kansas City playing the Kansas City baseball team. Oh, I get it now. So she's coming along. She's figuring the whole thing out. Yeah, I know. Right? For 4 years old, I'm like, that's the first question out of her mouth. We got to get her in an airplane. No, we don't. I'm like, geez. I don't know who made this child, but it couldn't have been me because that's some good foresight.
Harbinger of trouble, my friend.
Jeez, you're
raising
right.
A young attorney.
You're right. Yes, you're right. So I bring all this up because I was reading this interview with Brian Platt, who's the Kansas City, Missouri city manager. And he did this sit-down with Kevin Collison at CitySceneKC.com. Kevin does a good job over there, a lot of focus on what's happening in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. And he asked Brian Platt, the city manager, he said, what's the latest on the city and the Royals? And here's Brian Platt's answer in this article at CitySceneKC.com. Brian Platt says, quote, we are supportive of finding a way to make a deal with the Royals in the East Village site. We haven't been presented a real plan and haven't really even began to negotiate with them. Now, this is August 1st. 2 days ago, this article was written. This interview was done. The Royals say they're going to pick a site by the end of September, and the city manager for one of the two sites downtown, the other being North KC, is saying there's literally been no negotiation. That's not a good sign, right? When you're 6 weeks away from an announcement and one of the two parties has not been informed or had any negotiations, I don't like the odds there. Brian Platt goes on to say, we're not sure what their timing is or why they're hesitating so much. It seems like they're having a lot of problems internally making it work. So now he's putting the onus on the Royals. Platt goes on to say, the North Kansas City option is interesting also. And here's the kicker. This is the line from Brian Platt that signals to me he is accepting of the fact that the Royals may very well end up north of the river. He says here, either way, Kansas City wins in that we maintain a baseball team, we grow the economy, we add jobs, and people will still be coming downtown and going to bars and staying at our hotels. Either way, both sites will be developed into new, higher, better uses, meaning the East Village and the North KC option. But that's, to me, a guy signaling, hey, if the Royals end up leaving our city, well, it's still good for us. It's like when you're signaling to your friends, hey, I think I'm about to get dumped, but it's going to be fine. I'm going to love the single life again. I'm ready to be single and mingle and live life, and boy, it's going to be great. That's, as I read between the lines on Brian Platt's comments here, the city manager for Kansas City, Missouri, the fact that he's putting that in this answer on the future of the Royals, basically acquiescing to the fact that even if they leave us, we're going to be fine. We're going to add jobs. We're going to grow the economy. People are going to be coming downtown, going to the bars, staying at the hotels. Now, I'm not sure why they would be. I could see staying at the hotels if, the Royals are in the playoffs and people are coming from out of town. But outside of that, I'm not convinced there's going to be a lot of economic benefit for Kansas City, Missouri, outside the fact that they won't have to pay the 3/8 cent sales tax potentially.
Well, Pete, the new stadium's just a bird scooter ride away from downtown. So,
yeah, if those things still exist by 2030.
We can just get the streetcar over the river.
Well, that was part of the equation here as well. I think I saw something here about the streetcar. Gosh, I don't even know if you read the article, John, but you read my mind here.
No.
Okay. Here's the next comment from Brian Platt regarding the ballpark and its future. He said, the North Kansas City site becomes interesting from the angle that potentially extending the streetcar a little bit farther and maybe some type of alternate transit options that move people in different directions away from there. You've got less density in that area, easy highway access. Okay, as someone who used to live downtown and has gotten out of a busy T-Mobile Center looking for a streetcar, if you're banking on that for your mass transit after any kind of game, you're a fool. You will be sorely disappointed. As I mentioned many times on this show, I have outwalked a streetcar to get home when I was living at about 6th and Broadway. Walked up the hill, never saw a streetcar.
Yeah, this is going to be about as up-to-date as Ebbets Field in Brooklyn and the trolley cars back in 1930, I think.
Oh, my goodness gracious. You got to be kidding me, right?
Yeah, maybe we could just go through the river and combine it with an aquarium experience and just tackle two things at once.
Oh, my goodness. Now they're going to be like, hey, if the Royals go north, as long as we get a streetcar up there, which nobody actually wants and no one's asked for. By the way, how long is that streetcar going to take to build? How many businesses are going to screw over by trying to extend the streetcar, just like they're doing down south, going down to UMKC? There was an article 2 days ago I saw. Businesses along the streetcar line where they're putting the streetcar, those businesses are getting hammered right now. Hammered. To build something nobody has asked for. Literally nobody. Outside of a couple of the Bike Walk KC goobers. That's it.
I missed Tirade Tuesday, but this whole notion of maybe we should make a dedicated street to you think, geniuses?
Yeah.
If we did just, cleared a block and just dedicated the street all the way north to south. Figure it out ahead of time.
Yes. That's all it takes. Not much to it.
Now it's like, we kind of like the peaceful Main Street traffic.
Get out of here. Get out of here with that. Unbelievable. Well, speaking of sports, we've got a pair of tickets to go to training camp. Join the World Champs on Tuesday, August 8th, 5 days from now. We've got a pair of tickets for you. Parking's included, access to the tent for light refreshments. Text the keyword football to 913-408-7710. That's football to 913-408-7710. As we approach 7:15 on a busy Thursday morning, Mayor Lucas will join me at the bottom of the hour here on KCMO Talk Radio, 710 AM and 103.7 FM. By the way, who in Kansas City is trying to bring back the porn stash? We'll give you that answer coming up on KCMO. Oh, come on. I got to defend my guy, Rich Lowry from the National Review on the text line. Pete, Rich Lowry's Bill Kristol. No, stop with that. He's not Bill Kristol. Literally, I mean, do you read Rich Lowry? He just wrote a piece on Monday in the National Review saying Trump can absolutely win the general election. Bill Kristol is so Trump-triggered, he thinks that, Bill Kristol has fantasies, sexual fantasies about Donald Trump in an orange jumpsuit. That is such an insult to our friend Rich Lowry. That is crazy talk. Come on now.
Yeah, we got a few Trumpies out there. They get bent sometimes. Well, you can't criticize them until 9 o'clock, Pete, when everybody's at work. Remember?
Well, yeah, but come on. I mean, Rich Lowry's a fair guy. He literally thinks that Trump can win a general.
People don't want to hear what they don't want to hear sometimes.
I guess.
Isn't that funny? And they're not hearing what they think they're hearing.
Well,
that's
the whole
other
thing.
Yes.
The conversation we just had was not an anti-Trump. It was pro-Trump conversation, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the report from the Washington Post this morning. Former President Obama had a private meeting with Joe Biden this summer, and he warned him that Donald Trump is more formidable of a candidate than Democrats are realizing. After speaking with two people familiar with the meeting, Washington Post White House reporter Tyler Pager wrote about the private lunch Obama had with Biden in June, during which the former president told Biden not to underestimate Trump and pledged to support Biden's re-election bid. According to the sources, Obama voiced concern about Trump's political strengths, including an intensely loyal following, a Trump-friendly conservative media ecosystem, and a polarized country, underlining his worry that Trump could be a more formidable candidate than Democrats are realizing. As such, the 44th president promised to do all he could to help the president get reelected. And the reporter added, it was a welcome gesture for the White House at a time when Biden is eager to lock down promises of help from top Democrats. Well, if true, that would take Michelle Obama off the list of potential candidates to swoop in and save the day for the Democratic Party, right? Although what's the old saying? The old mob expression? They'll kill you with a smile on your face, right? Just don't turn around there, Joe. Sit with your back to the wall in the restaurant, buddy, when you're having lunch. All right?
Stay away from the window.
Yeah, exactly. The lunch was reportedly one of the two political leaders' regular catch-up meetings where they discuss a range of political, policy, and personal matters, including updates about their families. What, no weather talk? Come on. No. Joe only talks about the weather with foreign governments? Come on. You got to catch up on the weather. Joe will tell Barack about Rehoboth Beach in Delaware, and Barack will tell Joe about how the vineyard's doing. Come on now. The report said during their lunch, Obama made it clear his concerns were not about Biden's political abilities, but rather a recognition of Trump's iron grip on the Republican Party. So you got to give Obama this much. The guy has very good political instincts. He always has. That's how he, rose so quickly through the ranks. Obama and Trump are far more similar in a lot of ways than they are different. And they're very calculated. Trump's not that calculated per se, but they both just have the pulse of the moment. And Obama's the only guy, it sounds like, who is saying this in the media, in the Democratic Party, making the point that you should not be underestimating Donald Trump. Yes, he's going to have the legal woes. Yes, it's not good that Trump could end up being broke in terms of, his PAC money going towards legal issues, but you can't underestimate this guy. And I got this on the text line, Pete. I think that part of the Biden plan is to spend all of Donald Trump's money on lawyers. But didn't Hillary Clinton outspend him big time and he still won? Yeah, that's true. That is true. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that, Donald Trump's PAC, which has blown through $100 million over the last 6 to 12 months, they're trying to use Trump's PAC money to force him to spend it as a result on things like legal issues and legal woes. And that's money that then can't be spent on advertising. It can't be spent on, getting out the vote. It can't be spent on voter registration, on legal ballot harvesting. So that seems to be part of the plan. Now, yes, Hillary outspent him, But this is not 2016. Let's be this is not 2016.
In his sports analogy, Obama's the guy going, yeah, but it doesn't matter if the Chiefs don't have Tyreek Hill. They still could win the Super Bowl.
Yes. Yep.
Right?
That's exactly what he's saying.
Yeah.
Yep. He's still got a very formidable base, and in a very divided country. Let's not forget, people, I think the base is, in large part, the Trump base gives Trump too much credit for his 2016 win, and the Democratic progressive base gives Biden too much credit for his 2020 win. Trump got less votes in Wisconsin than Mitt Romney got in 2012. Biden, by the skin of his teeth, beat Trump in a couple of key states like Georgia and Arizona. And you flip a couple of those, and, we're in a Trump second term right now. So be very careful what you wish for. Coming up in Platte County, the lawsuit is getting more attention involving a transgender student and the school. We'll get to it next. Well, I didn't know how much attention this story was going to get, but I should have known better that there would be plenty of folks looking to jump on to the story. And that's up in Platte County. New lawsuit, ACLU is representing a transgender student at Platte County High School who said she wasn't allowed to use the girls' restrooms and that someone threatened to sexually assault her while she was in the boys' restroom. We told you about this story yesterday, and the student's name, obviously, as a minor, is not being provided. But it goes back to 2021 when this student was at the Platte County High School and was attending the Platte County High School, and it was determined that this student would have to use either the men's room, since this person is a biological male, or there is a single-use, single-gender-neutral bathroom in the school. And the student was told to use either the men's room or the single-gender-neutral bathroom at the school. However, on multiple occasions, the student used the girls' room. Student got suspended, and, the reasons for that were anywhere from, the single-gender-neutral bathroom is not near where I'm in class. There's always a line for the single gender neutral bathroom. Those were some of the excuses given. And the school was like, hey, can't be doing that. Did a couple of suspensions. And then ultimately, the student says they experienced harassment, threat of sexual assault from a male student, and then asked for virtual classes. So the father, Dusty Farr, spoke to KCTV5 along with the ACLU attorney. And I'll play some of that for you here on KCMO.
Went back from suspension and used the boys' restroom because she didn't want to get trouble again. And another student threatened to rape her, a male student, because she was in the boys' restroom. And after that, we asked the school for virtual learning.
Farr watched his daughter rapidly spiral into a severe depression.
She tried to commit suicide twice. She was hospitalized for that, and she's just pretty much gave up.
That is the father of this transgender student, Dustin Farr. And I want to play another clip here, by the way, from the father. Here's what else he told KCTV5.
I don't want another parent to have to see their kid hurt, try to kill themselves, or worse yet, lose a child because of these arcane policies.
Now, by now, you know where I am on this issue. I don't need to repeat that for the umpteenth time. You can have sympathy, as I do, for a fellow father going through something like this with a child. I disagree with how this father has handled his child for a multitude of reasons. Without knowing all the nitty-gritty details, I would not parent the way this guy has. That being said, I can have sympathy for him and his family and what they're going through. Right? That's reasonable. As a fellow human being, I can have sympathy and empathy for what the family's going through, as much as I disagree with how they've handled it. Anyone you know who's dealt with children with mental health issues, you understand it's tough, even if you would do it differently. Where I lose some of that sympathy is when the father is basically saying there in that second clip, well, my biological male son has to be allowed into the girls' room. And if you don't allow him into the girls' room, well, you're just pushing archaic belief systems. Here it is again.
I don't want another parent to have to see their kid hurt, try to kill themselves, or worse yet, lose a child because of these arcane policies.
Arcane policies, he says.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the right word. Did he mean archaic, perhaps? Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, well, either way, I mean, you sit there and you look at it and you say to yourself, all right, Mr. Farr, we just have to now essentially allow every boy who believes he is a girl into a girl's restroom. And as the father of two daughters, I have to just allow that, and I have to accept that across the board with my two daughters because, well, if not, there might be a chance that your son going to a girl is going to harm themselves physically. And I don't want that to happen. Let's be very clear. I don't want that to happen to this guy's child. Nobody wants that. But you don't get to use that as a leverage point. You don't get to say, hey, you better let my son into the girls' room and you better let every boy who's moving to a girl into the girls' room because if not, well, by golly, you're going to have blood on your hands. That is not. If you want to be fair, if you want to have a real adult, mature conversation about this, you don't get to play that card. You better let my boy into the girls' room. If not, you're basically responsible for any self-harm they commit. No. You're not going to guilt me like that. That is a completely unfair, irresponsible, ridiculous thing to say from Dustin Farr. Completely out of line. You can have sympathy and empathy for this man and his family and what they're going through. And you can say, hey, we've got a single gender restroom. Maybe we got to add a second one somewhere in the school, find an old broom closet, turn it into a bathroom if this is going to be a thing that, for whatever reason, is going to be happening. But the notion that we just have to now open up the girls' room to every boy who, for whatever reason, might be confused, no. And then hold that over my head as the father of two daughters, get lost. With all due respect, get lost. And then you've got the ACLU attorney, and anytime the ACLU is involved, the ACLU, of course, had a purpose at one point in its existence. Those days are long gone. Here's what the ACLU attorney had to say to KCTV5.
Under the Missouri Human Rights Act, individuals are protected from discrimination based on sex. And if you're discriminated against because of your transgender status or the sex you were designated at birth, that is sex discrimination.
No, it's not. The ACLU's case, and I'm not an attorney here, but I can pretend to play one for the next 2 minutes on the radio. The ACLU's case is that your gender is whatever you believe it is. Therefore, it's sex discrimination to not allow a boy into the girls' room at the Platte County High School. You see, that's what she just laid out one more time.
Under the Missouri Human Rights Act, individuals are protected from discrimination based on sex. And if you're discriminated against because of your transgender status or the sex you were designated at birth, that is sex discrimination.
Well, here's the thing. If you were providing, which the school was, a single gender restroom, a unisex single restroom, that's not discriminating against anybody. It's simply saying we can't have anybody because where do you draw the line? Right? Where do you draw? Even if you want to play that side of it, I'm going to refer and use the other side of it and say, okay, even if you're saying, hey, in Platte County or anywhere for that matter, you should allow a transgender person into the restroom of the gender they identify with, right? Even if you're making that case, where do you draw the line? Can a male simply decide that morning as he goes to school, he's going to, air quotes, be a girl and walk into the girls' room? And you can't say, no, you can't do that? Like, what qualifies you to deny what you biologically are? How much do you have to go through? Is it a certain level of hormone treatment? Is it certain surgeries? What prevents a boy from, just as a joke, and we all know high school boys love a good joke, a high school boy from just announcing in first period in a couple of weeks when school starts that he's going to, air quotes, be a girl, and he's just doing it to screw around, but then he walks in the girls' room. And God knows what happens. And you can't do anything about it because the ACLU claims that would be discrimination based on sex. And the ACLU may say, well, he's not really transgender. Oh, yeah? How do you know? Are you being a transphobe, ACLU? That's where this becomes, and that's where I think they lose their entire argument. They lose their entire argument on that. 913-408-7710. And now, of course, you're a taxpayer up there in Platte County. You got to spend taxpayer dollars on fighting the ACLU on this. Like I said, the ACLU at one point had a purpose. At one point had value. Now it's just kooky organization defending every crazy idea that they can get their hands on, especially in a place like Missouri. Nothing would bring more joy to the ACLU than trying to win a case like this in Missouri. It's just one of those issues where, it doesn't need to be as black and white as some want to turn it into. I don't despise a father who thinks he's doing right by his child. I don't. And what I'm referencing, of course, is this ACLU lawsuit up in Platte County that's now getting more attention. We told you first about it yesterday. Now some of the local TV stations are jumping on it. KCTV5 did an interview with the father of a transgender student up in Platte County. They're now suing Platte County High School with the ACLU, backing them over the fact that the student was told to use the men's room because the person's a biological male, or use the unisex single-gender restroom that's available in the school. The student instead was using the girls' room on multiple occasions, got suspended, and according to the father, the student did attempt suicide a couple of times. I don't despise this father. I don't have any hate in my heart for this father. I have empathy and sympathy for him because everyone, for the most part, tries to do right by their children. Now, my opinion is that he's going about it the wrong way, but 99% of parents are just trying to do the right thing every single day. But that does not give him the right to blame any self-harm that may occur by his child. That does not give him the right to put any blood on my hands or your hands or the hands of any parent who is against the idea of a biological male walking into a women's bathroom. It doesn't. And if he doesn't see, and if he can't see and understand that, then I still will have no hate in my heart for the father. I won't. That's just not who I am. But I will vehemently disagree with him, and I will defend my two daughters and every female out there who wants to walk into a locker room, go to a bathroom, and not worry about seeing a penis. Let's just cut right to the chase. Mike's in Kansas City, 913-408-7710. Go ahead, Mike. You're first up on KCMO.
Yeah, my sister has several daughters that are high school age, and when that thing happened in Virginia, I remember them talking terrified that they were going to have share bathrooms with biological males, and they were worried about being raped, and they were literally nervous about it. I don't know who deals with them. And the second thing is, forget about the transgender situation. Teen suicide is a serious problem. Mm-hmm. And, any parent of any kid that is suicidal needs to tell the kids that, suicide is not an alternative to dealing with problems. That's where the father should go with this thing. Not sitting there saying, well, if he commits suicide, I'm absolved of any parental responsibility for talking him out of suicide. It's society's fault for making him use a bad bathroom. I heard that, and regrettably, I've known, even went to high school with some kids who committed suicide. It's a very serious problem, and he's totally abandoned that part of responsibility of a parent of telling his kids, no, suicide's not an alternative. Anyway, but that's my opinion. But, it doesn't make good copy.
No.
It doesn't make a good
I think that's a good point there, Mike. And we all know people that have dealt with serious mental health issues. And in fact, unfortunately, in the wake of COVID, mental health issues amongst young people have skyrocketed. I mean, it's an incredibly serious problem right now. So when you look at it and you look at that very part of the issue, I mean, I agree. It does not absolve you of your parental duties if, by the way, your child is dealing with mental health issues, which, if we're also just being honest here about this, how much of those mental health issues are also tied to what this child is attempting to do to themselves? Is it fair to at least wonder that and have that conversation? 913-408-7710. That's the text line as well here on KCMO Talk Radio, rolling through some of your texts at 8:54. Pete, what about the girls' rights? I mean, that's what I'm saying. You don't get to say the rights of only one people exist. You just don't. You don't get to, especially when there's an option for them like a unisex bathroom. And that's where the school, and I think Platte County's got a very good defense here. The school did not say, hey, you've got to use the boys' room. You're a biological male. The school said, we have a unisex bathroom for you. They provided that. Okay, it might have been far away. It might not have been close to where the students' classes were. But, is the school required to make sure there's a bathroom available within 50 feet of where, your classroom is? Does that exist somewhere? Or are they actually just trying to do the best they can and accommodate people in a reasonable manner? Dan in Overland Park. Go ahead, Dan in Overland Park. You're on KCMO.
Morning. This issue, along with every other issue that has been hitting us for the last few years, all this insanity boils down to they're starting with a false premise. The trans issue, they're starting with a false premise that your chromosomes don't determine whether you're a man or a woman. We all know that that's false. Everybody in America, everybody in the world knows what a man and a woman is and has known that throughout the history of mankind. Whether it's this issue, whether it's climate change, whether it's the COVID response, all of this stuff starts with a false premise. And when you if I start with the premise that an arc is the shortest distance between 2 points, and I try to build a building based on that instead of a straight line being the shortest distance between 2 points, my building is going to fall to the ground. And I'm having a hard time tying this together.
No, I see what you're saying. I understand, Dan. I understand what you're saying, which is that if you start an argument with a false premise and you are forced to then defend what has been factually and biologically true since the beginning of mankind, people suddenly think that you're the crazy one, even though you're not. Scott's in Parkville. Hey, Scott, good morning. You're on KCMO.
Good morning. I just have a point about the age of people who are wanting to be transgender. I recently watched a television show where people are being released from committing violent crimes when they're in their youth. Why are we not discouraging people from making decisions about their biology when they're young?
I agree. I mean, Scott, this has kind of been the point of contention here in many states, including Kansas and Missouri. We don't let 18-year-olds buy alcohol. We don't let them rent cars. A lot of things we don't let minors do because their brains are not fully developed. And that's something I believed since this whole conversation started. You do you in America. You become whatever you want to become as an adult. But as a child, when you don't have the mental capacity to make decisions of this nature, and we know that, right? The science shows that. Why would we allow someone to do that to themselves? But, that's different from this topic per se, but of course it weaves into the broader conversation.